You're an ancient human. You don't have medicine, scans, doctors, or even a word for tumor. You just know something under your skin is growing when it shouldn't. It hurts. It spreads. Nobody understands why. And the strangest part is, this might have been happening long before civilization existed. That is the part most people get wrong about cancer. We talk about it like it belongs to the modern world. Hospitals, chemotherapy, cigarettes, pollution, processed food, microplastics, the entire terrifying ritual of Googling one symptom and becoming convinced you have 14 diseases before breakfast. But cancer is not a modern invention. Not really. Modern life changed cancer. It changed the risks, it changed the exposures, it changed how long we live and how often doctors can find it. But the basic biological problem behind cancer is much older than factories, much older than agriculture, and possibly older than humans themselves. Because cancer begins with something incredibly ordinary. Cells divide. That's it. That is the whole disaster hiding inside the miracle. Your body exists because cells copy themselves. Skin repairs, bones grow, blood renews, wounds close. Children become adults. Life keeps going because tiny biological machines are constantly reading instructions, copying them, following them, and replacing what breaks. Most of the time, this works so well you never think about it, which is good because thinking about it too much is how you end up lying awake at night wondering why your own body is allowed to run unsupervised. But every copying system makes errors. DNA can be damaged. Repair systems can fail. A cell can receive the wrong signal, ignore the correct signal, divide when it should stop, survive when it should die, and then teach its descendants the same terrible habit. That is cancer in the simplest possible sense. Not a curse, not punishment, not a modern conspiracy. A failure of cellular control. And here is one small but important distinction. Tumor does not automatically mean cancer. A tumor is an abnormal growth. Some tumors are benign, meaning they grow but do not invade the body in the same aggressive way. Some are malignant, meaning they can invade nearby tissue and sometimes spread to distant parts of the body. That difference matters because ancient bones can show abnormal growth, but abnormal growth is not always cancer. This is why responsible scientists are careful. They do not just see a weird bump on a bone and immediately declare prehistoric oncology solved. They compare shape, location, tissue pattern, destruction, growth, and sometimes use imaging technology to look inside the bone structure. Even then, the conclusion can be cautious, probable, consistent with, suggestive of. Science has a whole language for saying, this looks like the thing, but we are not going to pretend certainty is easier than it is. Which is annoying if you want a clean answer, but it is also exactly why the answer is worth trusting. And once you understand that, the question changes completely. The question is not, did ancient humans have modern cancer rates? They almost certainly did not. The real question is, could ancient human bodies develop cancer at all? And the answer is yes. They had cells, they had DNA, they had growth, they had repair, they had mutation, they had inflammation, infections, sunlight, smoke, injuries, parasites, and time. They had everything a living body needs to occasionally make a catastrophic internal mistake. Now, here's where we have to be careful. Ancient cancer is hard to find. Not because it wasn't there, but because cancer is a terrible archaeological witness. Most cancers grow in soft tissue, breast tissue, lungs, liver, stomach, colon, blood, organs that usually disappear after death. Archaeology is biased toward hard things. Stone tools survive, teeth survive, bones survive, clay pots survive. A tumor in a liver from 40,000 years ago does not politely wait around for a researcher with a clipboard. It vanishes. So when someone says, we don't find much cancer in ancient remains, that is true. But it does not mean cancer was absent. It means the evidence usually decomposed. This is the same basic problem we have with prehistoric clothing, wooden tools, baskets, medicine, and almost everything made from plants or flesh. The past does not preserve what happened equally. It preserves what was durable enough to survive being buried, crushed, flooded, burned, eaten, dissolved, and ignored for thousands of years. Cancer, unfortunately for historians, is usually not durable, unless it reaches bone. And that is where things get genuinely interesting. Because when cancer affects bone, either by starting there or spreading there, it can leave marks. Strangens, growths, lesions, destruction, abnormal remodeling. The kind of evidence that can survive long enough for paleopathologists, which is the best job title science ever invented, to look at a skeleton and say, something went very wrong here. Researchers have reported cancer-like tumors in ancient human remains from many periods of history. Egyptian mummies show signs of malignancy. Ancient skeletons sometimes show metastatic lesions. There are cases where bone damage strongly suggests cancer was present long before modern medicine had any word for it. But the most shocking evidence goes much further back than Egypt. In South Africa, researchers reported a malignant bone tumor in a roughly 1.7 million-year-old hominin foot bone. Not a modern human, not even necessarily our species, a much older relative from deep in the human family tree. The tumor has been interpreted as osteosarcoma, a type of bone cancer. Think about that for a second. A creature walking around almost 2 million years ago, before cities, before writing, before farming, before money, before bread, before anyone had invented the concept of being late to work, may have had cancer in its foot. That does not mean cancer was common. It does not mean ancient hominins were dropping dead of tumors all the time. It means the machinery that can produce cancer was already there. The risk was built into the biology. And this is where the story gets even bigger, because cancer is not just older than civilization. It is older than us. Dinosaurs got cancer. At least some of them did. Paleontologists have identified tumors in dinosaur bones, including evidence interpreted as osteosarcoma in a horned dinosaur from the late Cretaceous. That animal lived tens of millions of years before humans showed up and started acting like the main character of the planet. Which, honestly, very on brand for us. But the dinosaur did not smoke cigarettes. It did not eat processed meat. It did not live next to a chemical plant. It did not doom scroll medical forums at 2 a.m. It had cells. Those cells divided. And somewhere in that process, something went wrong. That is the uncomfortable truth. Cancer is not only a disease of modern life. It is a disease of multicellular life. The moment life became a cooperative project, the problem appeared. A single-celled organism does not get cancer in the way you do because it is already one cell doing its own thing. But a multicellular body is different. A body is a society. Trillions of cells agree, chemically and genetically, to cooperate. Liver cells do liver things. Bone cells do bone things. Skin cells stay in their lane. Blood cells move around doing extremely dramatic work and never get proper credit. Cancer is what happens when some cells stop cooperating. They keep dividing. They ignore the rules. They take resources. They invade territory. They break the basic social contract of the body. In a very real sense, cancer is cellular rebellion. And every large, long-lived animal has to solve this problem. Whales can get cancer. Dogs can get cancer. Cats can get cancer. Birds, reptiles, fish, even some very strange animals you would not emotionally expect to have oncology problems can develop tumors. Elephants are especially fascinating because they are huge and long-lived, which means they have many cells and many years for mistakes to happen. By simple math, they should get cancer constantly, but they do not. This is called Peto's paradox, and it is one of the most interesting problems in cancer biology. Large animals do not always get cancer at the rates you would expect from their body size. Elephants, for example, appear to have extra copies of tumor suppressor genes that help damaged cells self-destruct before they become dangerous. In other words, evolution looked at elephants and said, "This creature is going to be enormous. We should probably install better internal security." Authors did not get the elephant package. We got the human package. Decent, impressive, usually functional, but not perfect. Very much a product of evolution, which means less designed by a careful engineer and more patched repeatedly by natural selection while everything was on fire. So yes, ancient humans could get cancer. But here is the second question. How often? And that answer is much harder, because modern cancer rates are shaped by something ancient humans usually did not have very much of: old age. Cancer risk rises strongly with age because mutations accumulate over time. The longer a body lives, the more cell divisions happen. The more cell divisions happen, the more chances there are for copying errors, DNA damage, immune escape, and all the tiny failures that can eventually become a tumor. A human who dies at 28 from infection, childbirth complications, trauma, starvation, animal attack, or a bad decision involving a cliff has less time to develop many age-related cancers than a human who lives to 78 and spends the last 40 years giving their cells extra chances to mess up. This is one of the biggest reasons cancer feels so modern. We live long enough to see it. That sounds obvious, but it matters enormously. In prehistoric populations, many people died young. Infant and child mortality were brutally high. Infections that are now treatable could kill. Broken bones could become fatal. Dental abscesses could turn into systemic infections. A cut could become a death sentence if bacteria got lucky. So even if cancer existed, it had competition. It was one threat in a world absolutely packed with threats. That does not mean nobody lived long. That is another myth. Ancient humans were not all dead at 30. If you survived childhood, avoided major trauma, and had enough food and group support, you could live into your 50s, 60s, or beyond. But population structure matters. Fewer people reaching old age means fewer late-life cancers visible in the archaeological record. There is also a child cancer problem, and it matters. Some cancers are strongly age-related, but not all of them. Children can develop leukemia, brain tumors, bone cancers, and other malignancies. That means a short average lifespan does not eliminate cancer. It only changes which cancers are likely to appear and how often they become visible. So if a prehistoric child developed leukemia, archaeology would probably never know. Blood does not fossilize into a convenient diagnosis. The child might simply appear in the record as someone who died young, if they appeared at all. A whole category of ancient suffering can disappear because it left no durable mark. That is not a small limitation. That is the limitation. So the honest answer is this. Ancient humans almost certainly got cancer, but cancer probably made up a smaller share of total deaths than it does today. Not because their bodies were magically cleaner, not because nature was perfectly healthy, not because ancient life was some organic wellness retreat with worse dental care, but because they often died of other things first. And that brings us to the part people get very emotional about. Was modern life responsible? Yes and no. Yes, modern life introduced or amplified many cancer risks. Tobacco smoke, industrial pollutants, certain occupational exposures, some forms of radiation, air pollution, alcohol consumption patterns, diet-related risk factors, longer sedentary lifestyles. Modernity absolutely changed the cancer landscape. But no, modern life did not invent the underlying disease. This distinction matters because people often confuse origin with frequency. A thing can be ancient and still become more common under modern conditions. Fire is ancient. House fires are shaped by architecture. Viruses are ancient. Air travel changes how they spread. Human anxiety is ancient. Social media turned it into an Olympic sport. Same with cancer. The biological capacity was always there. The modern world changed the odds. Ancient humans had their own exposures. They breathed smoke from fires, constantly, not occasionally, constantly. Fire was heat, protection, cooking, gathering, survival. But fire also meant indoor smoke, soot, particulates, and chemical compounds entering the lungs day after day, year after year. Nobody had a chimney in the early Paleolithic. Nobody had ventilation standards. Nobody had an air purifier making a smug little beep in the corner. They had smoke. And smoke can damage tissue. It can irritate lungs. It can contribute to chronic inflammation. It can expose the body to carcinogenic compounds, depending on what is burned and how often it is inhaled. So the idea that prehistoric life was free of environmental carcinogens is just wrong. Nature makes carcinogens all the time. Sunlight can damage DNA. Certain molds produce toxins. Some plants contain dangerous compounds. Some minerals and dusts are harmful when inhaled. Viruses can trigger cancers. Parasites can contribute to chronic inflammation. The ancient world was natural, yes, but natural does not mean safe. A volcano is natural. So is arsenic. So is a bear. Nature is not your wellness influencer. Ancient humans lived inside a biological world that was constantly damaging them and constantly forcing their bodies to repair the damage. Most repairs worked. Some did not. Now, cancer also depends on diagnosis, and this is another reason it feels modern. Ancient people may have had cancer without anyone knowing what it was. A person loses weight, becomes weak, develops pain, coughs blood, their belly swells. A wound-like growth appears and does not heal. To the people around them, that might look like wasting, curse, infection, imbalance, spiritual attack, punishment, or simply they are dying. No scan, no biopsy, no pathology report. No one saying stage 3, just suffering without a category. That is one of the strangest things about disease history. The body can experience something for hundreds of thousands of years before language catches up. The disease exists before the diagnosis. The pain exists before the name. Cancer, as a named category, is ancient in written medicine. Greek physicians use the word karkinos, meaning crab, because some tumors seem to grip surrounding tissue like crab legs. That image is old, disturbingly old, but the biological process is older than the word by a huge margin. And before writing, there would have been no clean category at all, just patterns people noticed, a lump that grew, a body that wasted away, pain that did not match an injury, a person who did not recover. They may not have understood cancer, but they absolutely would have understood that something inside the body could turn against you. Here's where it gets emotionally complicated. It is tempting to imagine ancient humans as healthier because they were closer to nature. No processed food, no cigarettes, no factories, no fluorescent office lighting slowly draining your will to exist. And yes, some modern risks were absent. But ancient life was not gentle. It was physically demanding, infectious, smoky, violent, nutritionally unstable, and medically unforgiving. The idea that cancer was rare because ancient humans lived pure natural lives is not science. It is nostalgia with a bone necklace. The better explanation is less romantic and more interesting. Cancer was always possible, but the balance of risks was different. Fewer people reached advanced ages. Many cancers left no skeletal trace. Some exposures were lower, some were higher. Diagnosis did not exist. Records were absent. And when cancer did occur, it was often absorbed into the general category of mysterious decline. That is why the archaeological record looks quiet. Not silent, quiet. Every once in a while, bone preserves a clue. A lesion, a growth, a pattern of destruction, a fossilized whisper from a body that failed in a very specific way. And when researchers find those traces, they remind us that cancer was never just a modern shadow. It has been following life for an almost unimaginable length of time. But there is a hopeful side to this, weirdly. If cancer is ancient, then fighting it is also part of a much older story. Every body you have ever seen is the result of billions of years of anti-cancer problem solving. DNA repair, immune surveillance, cell suicide, growth control, tissue boundaries, biological systems that catch errors constantly, silently, without applause, without drama, without you ever knowing. You are not alive because your cells never make mistakes. You are alive because most mistakes are caught. Think about how insane that is. Your body is not a perfect machine. It is a crowded civilization of cells, and every day, most of them follow the rules. They cooperate, they repair, they die when they are supposed to die. They refuse to become dangerous. The miracle is not that cancer happens. Given enough cells and enough time, cancer is almost inevitable somewhere. The miracle is that it does not happen more often. So, did ancient humans get cancer? Yes, not the way we experience it today. Not with the same statistics, not with the same exposures, not with the same diagnostic categories, not with the same medical reality. But yes, ancient humans had the biological machinery that makes cancer possible. Some of them almost certainly developed tumors. Some died from them. Some carried cancers no one recognized. Some left traces in bone. Most left nothing behind. The disease was there before hospitals, before agriculture, before cities, before writing, before anyone had a word for it. And maybe that is the most unsettling part. Cancer does not belong to modernity alone. It belongs to the deep history of bodies. It is tied to growth, repair, healing, aging, and the fragile agreement that keeps trillions of cells working together as one creature. You are part of that same agreement right now. Your cells are copying, repairing, checking, deleting, rebuilding. Most of them are doing exactly what they are supposed to do, quietly, competently, without requiring your opinion, which is probably for the best. And somewhere far behind you, an ancient human sat near a fire with no language for cells, no theory of mutation, no doctor, no diagnosis, and maybe a pain inside their body they could not explain. They did not know what cancer was, but cancer knew what bodies were. And that is the real answer. Cancer is not new. Our ability to see it is new. Our ability to name it is new. Our ability to fight it is newer still. But the risk itself is ancient, written into the same cellular bargain that made complex life possible in the first place. So next time someone says cancer is just a modern disease, the honest answer is, not exactly. Modern life changed the story. It did not start it. And what about you? Do you think cancer is mostly a modern problem, an ancient biological problem, or both at the same time? Let me know in the comments. Until then, see ya.